Now, once a bustling city of over 30 lakh people now has come to a standstill. Russia continues to rain missiles on key Ukrainian cities, including Kyiv. Amid the fresh set of shelling on Kyiv, a residential building collapsed in the capital. 2 people sustained injuries in the bombardment while emergency services evacuated 35 others. Air raid alerts have been issued in several major cities and sirens have been activated in Kyiv, Lviv, Dnipro, Odessa, Vinnytsia and Cherkasy. According to reports, loud explosions were also heard in Kyiv suburbs. A weapons factory in the capital city was heavily damaged in an attack on Tuesday. Outside the factory, shopkeepers and helpers were seen sweeping up glass and other debris. The Ukrainian Ministry of Defense claimed Fox News journalists were killed in Russian firing. The camera person and producer were killed while the anchor lost his leg. Fox News in a statement has confirmed this. Amid fear of the capital city, a curfew has been imposed in Kyiv for the next 36 hours.
І працювати кожному на своєму місці, кожному, в тому числі нашим представникам, нашій делегації у переговорах з Російською Федерацією. Це важливо. Складно, але важливо, тому що будь-яка війна завершується угодою. Зустрічі тривають. Як мені доповідають, позиції на переговорах звучать вже реалістичніше. Проте ще необхідний час, щоб рішення були в інтересах саме України. Вільні народи вільної країни, 8 років війни на Донбасі, 20 днів повномасштабного вторгнення, 3-й тиждень закінчується. Ми всі хочемо миру, якнайшвидше. Ми всі хочемо перемоги. І постійно є таке відчуття, що ще трохи. І ми здобудемо те, що належить саме нам, Україні, по праву. Але ще потрібні зусилля, потрібне терпіння, ще потрібно боротися. І працювати кожному на своєму місці, кожному, в тому числі нашим представникам, нашій делегації у переговорах з Російською Федерацією. Це важливо. Складно, але важливо, тому що будь-яка війна завершується угодою. Зустрічі тривають. Як мені доповідають, позиції на переговорах звучать вже реалістичніше. Від артилерійського удару російських військ загинули ще 2 журналістів. Українка Олександра Кувшинова та представник американської Fox News П'єр Загржевський. Ще 1 журналіст важко поранений. Обстріл стався у Київській області. І це ще одна вагома причина, щоб посилювати західні санкції проти Російської Федерації.
Rajesh Pawar is getting us the very latest as things continue to remain extremely tense in Kyiv. Rajesh, give us an overview of the situation right now, even as the Ukrainian president has clearly said that in Kyiv, residential buildings are getting hit and dozens of civilians have lost their lives.
See, Sneha, like yesterday, there was a residential complex which was hit. About maybe 200 apartments were totally destroyed and were on fire. Same was the case day before yesterday. 1 apartment block was hit. Since yesterday afternoon, since 4 p.m. yesterday local time, until today, there has been only 1 blast in the city. And besides this, generally the city is calm. But there's a complete curfew in Kyiv today. Nobody, including the press personnel, cannot move out. Nobody's allowed to be on the streets except probably military and territorial defense people. Nobody's allowed to move out. This is probably in view of intensified fighting on the outskirts now, when the Ukrainian army is totally engaged with the Russian army on the outskirts of the city, and they do not want any kind of sabotage or any kind of disruptive activities by the Russian special forces or the Russian agents which had infiltrated the city before the beginning of the war. So as far as city is concerned, it looks like calm inside, but on the outskirts, fighting is right now going on. Russian army is still not in total control of the 2 axes, which is coming from Brovary in the northeast and from Irpin northwest. They're still not in control. Until that time, they do not control them completely. They cannot launch a full-scale ground offensive on Kyiv. Sneha.
Well, also, Rajesh, the concern is that, because you did mention that nobody is allowed to step out, not even journalists, because journalists have also been killed in this war. Journalists from Fox News have died. One of the journalists has lost a leg. There have been concerns that journalists are not being spared, and Russian firing continues irrespective of who's traveling in a car. They're hitting at civilians, they're hitting at journalists, and there is just no relenting when it comes to the attack from Russia, isn't it?
Look, Sneha, this is war. These are not normal times. It's a war, and it's a large-scale war now. There is a lot of fighting going on, intense, fierce fighting going on, a lot of fronts. And the war journalists, I have always equated them like to the soldiers. Like they have as much risk, or probably more risk than the soldiers. Soldiers are well equipped; they can fight back. They have all the safety gear. Whereas all the journalists do not have that kind of safety gear and that kind of information which a soldier has. So they are probably at more risk than even soldiers here. And sometimes journalists also, like especially the frontline journalists, the war reporters, they go right to the front line, even beyond that. Like this person who got shot 3 days back, the American citizen, he was even ahead of the Ukrainian lines, between Ukrainian and the Russian lines, and then a stray bullet hit him, or they were fired on the car. They was firing by whom nobody knows, but yes, two of them got injured and one of them died in that. So it's a risky business. I mean, if you are reporting war and that too from front lines, you take calculated risks, but at times it can just be fatal, like in these two cases. Sneha.
These journalists have been caught, unfortunately, in the crossfire. Rajesh, as far as diplomacy is concerned, do get us up to speed with the several rounds of talks that have taken place between Ukraine and Russia.
Look, Sneha, after the 4 rounds of talking, face-to-face talkings, now, as I reported yesterday, both Russia and Ukraine have agreed to have a daily conference. They are meeting daily, virtually, every day, and probably they will have a face-to-face meeting once things seem to be more sorted. The moment they feel that they are moving towards some kind of solution, maybe they'll have face-to-face meeting. These daily meetings also, the virtual meetings, also are helpful in coordinating with regards to humanitarian corridors, so that if there's any incident, they can talk to each other. It's something more of like a hotline also. It acts like that as well, so that moment there is some escalation in a humanitarian corridor, or where civilians are in danger, the things can be conveyed to each other, and it can be better coordinated. Besides this, you must be aware that yesterday, 3 prime ministers from EU countries, Poland, Slovakia, and one more, the 3 of them, they visited Kyiv and met Zelensky, which are more symbolic in nature than of any difference. It didn't make any difference in diplomacy as well as on any war effort, because what Ukraine wants is basically more armaments, more airplanes, some kind of air defense system like Patriot being deployed in Ukraine, which seems to be happening. Also, Zelensky yesterday addressed the US Congress, and again, like he has been doing for the last 10 days, he literally pleaded with them to enforce no-fly zone of Ukraine, because that's very, very essential for Ukraine to sustain this war. Otherwise, probably they will not be able to sustain this war for long, and they will suffer heavy losses. So he again pleaded to US Congress. And this one particular aspect, NATO and America are not ready to budge. They will not do it, because that will put them in straight one-to-one confrontation with Russia, which they want to avoid at any cost. Sneha.
Rajesh, thank you so much for getting us all of those details. We'll, of course, keep coming back to you for more on that story. Do be safe.
Marina, what do you think is the situation of birds and animals in this war?
I think the situation in Ukraine, it's not good, because
Look in the camera, please.
more people left their pets on house and another place, and sometimes there are go out their pets to the play yard, I don't know in English.
Yeah, yard.
And I think it's not normal, because pets don't have pets
They don't have food. You mean they don't have food?
Israel don't have food. And I have now cats, one cat in my house, and I don't know what this cat, but I think this is a cat who lived in a house.
Well, as Russia closes in on Kyiv, Mayor Vitaly Klitschko has called on civilians to camp in bunkers as a precautionary measure. Listen in to his reaction.
We see the result of bombing. Civilian people died. Last morning we was one district Abalon, where people killed. Today another apartments building. We don't know exactly the numbers, of people. We have not entrance to every floor, but right now close to 50 people actually evacuate. A lot of them injured. We give the full support to everyone. I call to everyone, every civilian, please spend the time, if it's possible, in bunkers.
Relentless attacks, bombardments and civilian killings. The gory sight of destruction has become synonymous to Russia-Ukraine war, even as Ukraine continues to defend their motherland for 21 days. Missile attacks in Kyiv and strikes in Lviv paint a truly disturbing picture of the war front. Here's more.
Death and destruction everywhere. From capital city Kyiv,
complete building has been destroyed, and there was another blast which I saw just before this. It was in the middle of a road. Nearby buildings were damaged, but it fell on a broad road, so not much casualties. But here I believe few people have died and a lot of them were injured.
to Ukraine's western city of Lviv.
Air raid sirens up again, blaring in the city of Lviv. People have been going into the bomb shelters. Not many, quite a few of the apartments over here do not have bomb shelters, but the parking and the basements are where they're moving.
Russian missiles are raining misery. This four-story residential building in Kharkiv was reduced to rubble in seconds, killing at least 2 people. Ukraine has alleged Russian airstrikes have made evacuation attempts dangerous. The relentless Russian assault and the West's risk-averse assistance has forced Ukraine to climb down. The country has reaffirmed it will not join NATO.
Four high-rise buildings in Kyiv were bombed this morning. Dozens of people were dead. They shell schools and universities. It is clear that Ukraine is not a member of NATO. We understand that. We are rational people. For years, we have heard about the alleged open door policy, but we have already heard that we will not go in there.
While Russian forces are advancing, the war is proving a costly affair for Moscow. The UK has imposed sanctions on 370 more Russian elites. Other US allies are also expanding sanctions to cover more Russian firms and oligarchs.
It's important for Canadians and the world to know that Canada will continue supporting Ukraine and its independence, integrity, sovereignty, including its right to defend itself.
Russia has hit back. It has vowed to reduce dependence on the West.
We will solve the problem, and the solution will be to no longer depend on our Western partners, be it governments or companies that are acting as tools of Western political aggression against Russia, sure that we never again find ourselves in a similar situation and that neither some Uncle Sam nor anybody else can make decisions aimed at destroying our economy. We'll find a way to eliminate this dependence. We should have done it long ago.
Since the start of the war, hundreds of civilians have lost their lives to Russian bombings. 2.8 million people have fled the war in search of safe zones. The 5 rounds of talks have so far failed to yield a ceasefire. Bureau Report, India Today.
The Russian military might has met a resilient Ukrainian army. Putin's forces have suffered some bitter blows in the 3 weeks of the war. So far, 4 top Russian commanders have been killed in Ukraine. Here's more.
Armed to the teeth. Tough. Ruthless.
The Russian military is one of the most intimidating forces in the world. But the Ukrainian resistance has been equally fierce. Ukraine has inflicted enough injury on the aggressor. Another top Russian commander, Major General Oleg Mityaev, has been killed. He died during a fierce battle with Ukrainian troops in Mariupol. He was the commander of 150th Motorized Rifle Division. This is not the first blow for the Russians in this war. Earlier, a key commander of the Russian tank regiment, Colonel Andrei Zakharov, was eliminated in Kyiv after a heavy fight. Zakharov was a recipient of the Order of Courage from Putin himself in 2016. In a fatal blow to Russia's crack special forces, Major General Vitaly Gerasimov, the Chief of Staff of the 41st Army, was killed in Kharkiv. Russia also lost the head of the 7th Airborne Division Major General Andrei Sukhovetsky. A war hero, the general's loss is being seen as a bitter blow to Putin's crack units. A sign Russia's assault isn't going to plan.
The key difference now between the Ukrainian and the Russian forces is the morale component. The Ukrainians have fought very well and morale is very high, and that is infectious. And it is clearly not just between the Ukrainian professional soldiers, but also the Ukrainian civil society as a whole. They see this as a fight for national survival. And on the Russian side, morale is very low.
The death of the highly decorated veterans could be a major demotivator for the Russians and a morale booster for the Ukrainian defenders.
UN has opposed a Russian TV journalist's arrest after an anti-war protester interrupted a live news bulletin on Russia's state TV channel 1 on Monday. Well, the woman protester could be heard shouting, "Stop the war, no to war," as the news anchor continued to read from her teleprompter. Take a look at this report.
An anti-war protest live from a Russian newsroom.
Сотрудничество в рамках союзного государства, а на совещании в правительстве обсуждали, как сохранить...
Marina Ovsyannikova, an editor at state-run Channel 1, ambushes a news telecast, holding a placard that said, "No war, stop the war. Don't believe propaganda, they are lying to you."
союзного государства, а на совещании в правительстве обсуждали, как сохранить...
The protester could be heard shouting, "Stop the war, no to war," as the news anchor continued to read from her teleprompter. The channel immediately switched to a news report while the protester was removed. Ovsyannikova was arrested on Tuesday, a day after she staged the protest. As fear mounts over her safety, the UN Human Rights Office has asked Russia to ensure the journalist does not face reprisals for her protest on live television. Ovsyannikova could face charges under a new law against discrediting the armed forces. The law passed on March 4th bans the spread of alleged misinformation about the use of the armed forces of the Russian Federation. Ovsyanikova's is not the first protest against war.
Да, еще раз заходите, еще раз вам придется зайти на YouTube-канал «Дождь».
Earlier, TV Rain, one of the independent media outlets in Russia, shut down after receiving threats from Russian authorities over its coverage of the invasion of Ukraine. The news channel staff had resigned on air after declaring no to war. As the Russian war on Ukraine continues, more voices are finding courage to question President Vladimir Putin. Bureau Report, India Today.
Global oil prices seem to have finally simmered down a little. Brent crude, one of the most popular international benchmarks, followed by analysts, has slipped to below $100 a barrel. A special report on why oil prices may fall as quickly as they rose.
prices off the boil. Prices below $100 per barrel for the first time this month. Yes, you heard that right. After touching nearly $130 a barrel, the highest in 14 years, crude oil prices have slipped below the psychologically crucial $100 mark again. Panic created by Putin's Red Army rumbling into Ukraine seems to have ebbed, with markets taking cues from ceasefire talks between Russia and Ukraine. Brent was at around $58 a year ago. It slowly rose to $75 in July before topping $87 in October. Prices eased in December last year, falling to $61. However, the pre-war face-off between Russia and Ukraine pushed up prices to $97. Panic when the war began had Brent trading at nearly $130. A week later, prices have cooled to under $100. So why have oil prices eased, even as the Russian army closes in on Ukraine's capital, Kyiv? Markets feel the ongoing peace talks between Russia and Ukraine may actually work, a step which would increase the global supply of Russian oil. Secondly, increasing COVID cases in China have forced the lockdown of several areas, leading to speculation that industrial activity may drop in China, leading to lower oil consumption. Meanwhile, India is also sourcing additional oil, reportedly at cheaper rates from Russia. Indian Oil Corporation has bought 3 million barrels of Russian Ural for a May delivery. This is India's first purchase of Russian-grade Ural since Moscow began the invasion of Ukraine on February the 23rd. The fall in prices will be a major relief to oil marketing companies in India, which have not been allowed to hike petrol and diesel prices for the past 5 months. Though the Indian crude basket is still way above the $100 mark, the financial burden on companies is expected to ease in the coming days. Bureau Report, Business Today TV.